So next I'm going to make the lobster risotto, but first I need to show you how to prepare and kill the lobster. So here I've got one of Port Isaac's finest lobsters. Now the reason why I cover it over is the best thing to do is to keep this little guy nice and calm is to make sure you cover it over with something nice and cold. So keep a nice damp cloth over the top before you start this bit. There's only one way to kill a lobster really, and that is to go straight through the head. Look away if you don't like this sort of thing, but on top of the lobster you have a cross. So make sure you've got the knife nice and firm, and then insert your knife into the top. At this point you take off the claws and then off with the tail. So obviously now the lobster's been split into the claws, the tail and the head. The head you can use for stocks and for soups. Also when we've taken all the shell off of the actual meat you could use that as well. The lobster will still move when you've taken the head off, but I can guarantee you that it is dead. So when you're making a lobster risotto, the best way to cook it is to get a rapid boiling pan of water. Lots of salt in there. Think about how salty the sea is, that's how salty you want your water. Now the reason that is, if you put your lobster into a pan of water that hasn't got any salt in it, all the flavour is going to go into the water. What the salt does is act as a barrier and keeps the flavour inside. So the first thing you need to do is cook the claws. The claws will take longer. And these sort of claws to cook all the way through will take about 5 or 6 minutes. You just want to release the meat from the shell. So we're going to cook them for 2 minutes. So they go straight in. Once that's been on there for about a minute, we're going to put the tail in as well. Now the tail needs only about a minute just to release the meat, and that goes in too. So whilst this is cooking, we'll just get rid of the head. We can save the heads for stock, so we'll put them in the freezer. Let's take the tail and the claws out. So the lobster tail's been there for about a minute and a half. And the claws have now been in there for about 2.5 minutes. So as soon as you can handle the lobsters when they've come out, you want to split the claw and the knuckles. The reason why you do this while they're still hot is the actual lobster's got quite a lot of fat. And what happens if it cools down? The actual fat solidifies and you find it quite tricky to get out of the shell. So you just split . So what you're looking for is to be able to get the meat out of the shell in one go. If you don't, it doesn't matter because this is for a risotto. And sometimes I actually use the lobsters that are not always perfect, you know, the ones that are sort of slightly smaller or slightly bigger. And that's what's good. This is why we came up with this recipe. So what I'm doing here, I'm using one of these cheaper spoons that have the thin end. And they're really good for just prepping any shellfish, you know, lobsters and crabs actually. The thin end's nice and strong, so you can get it in there and make sure you pull the meat out in one like that. Next we're going to do the tail. The tail's a little bit more tricky, but as long as you just keep it nice and flat, make sure you just crack around the end of the tail, pull that off, and then just using a little bit of force, put the lobster's tail on its side, and then just, when you hear it crack, use your weight. That's basically just broke the shell, so when you just pull the shell apart, and your lobster tail should come out in one piece. So take the tail out, and then what you have running down the middle of the tail is an intestine tract. So you need to remove that because that contains sand and anything the lobster's eaten, you know, and you don't want to eat that. So just carefully, or just off center, you cut the lobster down the middle. And then, as you can see there, you just take this out. If you don't cut through it, you should be able to just get it out all in one. So that's just full of sand. and anything the lobster's eaten, but you don't really want to eat that. So we remove that part. And now what I do now, at this stage you could cool the actual meat or serve the meat. You know, you could grill that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it up into smaller chunks of lobster just to finish off through the risotto. So just naturally where the tail actually is connected, I cut through the lobster. Just cut the lobster into chunks as well, in the claws. And there you have it, that's the lobster that's been cooked, all cut to the right size, ready for the risotto. And then we got the shells, which I wouldn't throw away. I'd use them for a stock or for a soup or something. Don't get rid of any of it, use it all.